This is Brother Beyond the Craft with Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu.
Hello and welcome to Brother Beyond the Craft episode 2. My name is Neil Thomas Allen and I am joined as always by my co-host Taz Bachu. Taz, how are you, mate?
I am very good, thank you, Neil. All the better for hearing your voice.
Well, isn't that lovely? And hopefully,
How are you?
And I'm all right, thank you. Hopefully a lot better quality than last time. And if not, I'm just cursed and I can't get it right. As always, we are joined by our wonderful producer, Josh. Producer Josh, how are you, my friend?
I am very well. I'm very well indeed, thank you. I'm sat with a lovely view of the garden and it's beautiful sunshine. So yeah, cannot complain.
Perfect stuff. And we are also joined, as always, by our little shining star at the moment, Jack Saunders. Jack, how are you, my friend?
Cheers, guys. Good to see you again. Last time's episode was fantastic, really enjoyable. Really good to see the feedback coming back from that. So I'm really excited for what we've got tonight as well.
So before we do get started, Jack, I'd like you to talk about what you've been up to lately with the amazing charity work you've been doing and allude on that a little bit.
It was just something that came up. I saw another Mason had put up the same sort of challenge, and I thought, let me donate to it firstly, and then what I'll do is I'll try and share this myself and see if I get any luck. I thought.
So just to clarify, mate, what is it that you're donating to? What's the organisation?
Yeah, I'll get to that now. So one fantastic charity that we have is the TLC, Teddies for Loving Care, and what they do is they donate teddy bears to accident and emergency and children's wards all across the country, really. So that the nurses and doctors can give out these little teddy bears to children when they're feeling scared, when they're in a new environment, when they're being brave. And my job is a children's nurse. So I've always seen these teddy bears like being put to really good use. And it was only in recent years that I found out that they were donated by Freemasons. So I saw this and I thought, at this time, I'm sure they could really do with a little boost as well. So I thought, right, if I do a Just Giving page, I'll try and get £1,000. That will almost buy 1,000 teddy bears to give out. And I thought it might take a week or two or a month, but whatever it takes, well, I'll get there, £1,000. Within 22 hours, I'd got that £1,000 already. So that was a big bonus. And then within a week, I've doubled that and got 2,000, and now I think it's 2,250, something like that. So I'm absolutely over the moon that there's 2,000 teddy bears or more that will be winging their way to hospitals all over the country to help kids. I worked in A&E last week, and I actually gave out 4 teddy bears to children that had come to the department. So it was a bit overwhelming to have raised that money and then also given out teddy bears in the same week. It was just fantastic. And I want to thank everyone that has donated to that. It's fantastic.
We're insanely proud of you, mate, as part of the pod, and with all of the amazing work you're doing at the moment in this tough time. So honestly, I'm sure, all of us, when we can, we'll give you a collective big hug and buy you several alcoholic beverages. Cool. So let's get on to something we're going to unveil, which we're quite excited about. I'm gonna let the guy who's worked on it today in such a small turnaround time have a chat about it. Producer Josh, over to you, mate. What have we got to unveil?
Well, just to say, if any of you ever, require a website building, and if the website designer ever says it's going to take, a couple of weeks, please just let me know, because I have built us an entire website for the podcast in the space of about 6 hours. And don't get me wrong, it's not gonna, change the world, but it's nice that we've now got, our own kind of little piece of the internet, and we've got our own little online presence. So we do now have a Brother Masonic website, which is available at brothermasonic.com, where you can listen to the podcast. You can see all of the other places that you can listen to them and subscribe to the podcast as well. And of course, there's details on there for how you can get in touch with us. We've all got Brother Masonic email addresses now. All of our Twitters are on there and everything. So get on there. It's brothermasonic.com. And it would be great for you to give us some feedback. Let us know what you think.
What I will say is other web designers are available. I know Josh just shamelessly plugged his website making abilities, and it is amazing. But just to be fair, other website designers are available.
That is absolutely true.
Well done, chaps. Okay, so now to get into the reason we're all here this afternoon, let's delve into the Order of the Secret Monitor. So, as you know, Season 2 of Brother is all about the progressive orders administered from Mark Mason's Hall or 86 St James. This afternoon is no different. We are delving into probably one of my favourite of all of the progressive degrees. That was a bit of a mouthful. We are joined this afternoon by our expert for the evening, who is none other than the Grand Sword Bearer, worthy brother John Watts. John, how the devil are you, my friend?
Well, good afternoon, Neil. It's very pleasant to meet you remotely from Newcastle upon Tyne on a beautiful sunny evening here also.
Fantastic stuff. Well, listen, we're over the moon to have you with us. I would have loved to meet you in person at 86, but obviously during this quarantine period, we are doing our damn best. So give me a very quick background about yourself and how you got involved with the order.
Well, I'm one of those who was twiddling my thumbs as a teenager because father, grandfather, uncle, etc., were all Freemasons. So I joined age 21. Progressed through the craft chair. It was around about that time. So I was about 27, 28-year-old then that I joined the chapter. And then my next order after that was Rose Croix. And NT. So that was my first venture into what are now called the selective or elective and progressive orders. And I suppose out of all the Mark Mason's Hall orders, I'll come clean straight away and say the KT continues to be my favourite. That's probably because I've got a policing background, and it's the military form of that that attracts me. But of course, as one progresses through Freemasonry, you look round where your friends are meeting in different places and in different orders. And so I joined the OSM, and it's become one of the ones that I seem to have become as much involved with as anything else. It really raised its head for me, I suppose, when I was coming towards the end of my 6.5 term as an craft, and then I ended up finding myself as treasurer of one conclave, that's what the units are called in this order, and secretary of another, and I was also made the commander of the Provincial Arch of Steel, something else that attracts me to it, because in the same way as Knights Templar, I have a band of knights. In the OSM, we have a band of brothers who were appointed to the Provincial Grand Supreme Ruler's Arch of Steel, and I had the great pleasure of being in charge of that for a few years. So great fun. And another, I suppose, reason that I liked it so much is because it meant that I had a membership at yet another Masonic Hall, because up here in the Northeast, we've got over 30 Masonic halls in our province of about 6,000 members. And I think it's quite nice to be a member of a unit in many of the Masonic halls.
That sounds awesome. And I think John, I'm very similar to you in the sense that my dad still is a Freemason up in Warwickshire, and yeah, joined at 21. And it wasn't until I met Neil that I learned about the wonderful world of kind of the other orders, and really quite recently joined the OSM a few months ago. Again, another form thrust under my nose in true Neil Thomas Allen fashion. But I guess I could share my experiences, but I don't think I'd be doing it justice because I'm very new. So would you be able to kind of give us the background story of the order?
Well, it's quite simply a story of a very strong friendship. The order is also known, as well as being the Order of the Secret Monitor, it's known as the Order of David and Jonathan. And it's the Old Testament story of David and Jonathan and the friendship that they had between the king and somebody who wasn't of the same group as the king and such as that. So it's a very nice friendship story that the ritual practices in both the first degree and the second degree. And then the other unique thing about the OSM is the deacons, and whereby in the craft mark, etc., there are 2. In the OSM, there are 4, but they have a unique role. And it, again, is a role of friendship. And they are called visiting deacons. And their responsibility is at least twice during each the gap between each meeting, is to get in touch with every member that's put in their charge. So the membership of a unit, a conclave, is split into 4, and the visiting deacons will have, I suppose, for an average unit of 20 to 30 members, that they will have between 5 and 8 members each that they need to get that they're expected to get in touch with, and to give friendship to, and help as required. So I suppose they've got the job as a chaplain, as an almoner, as a charities rep, and in times like this, these unprecedented times at the moment, we've got an order where we've got this great network already in place to keep in touch with people.
I think that's a really positive thing about the OSM, in what makes it, by my estimation, the real friendly degree, is that you have these 4 people sat in the middle of the room, and they are it's their job to look after the membership. So they really do need to check to make sure that they're getting on okay. If they've got any issues in the family or themselves, how can the unit help? And I think that's one of the things that makes it truly unique against every other order. It really does push caring and kind of practicing what you preach in terms of the Masonic values. Just to clarify, so the actual lodge group or lodge unit is called a conclave.
Indeed.
And the equivalent of worshipful master in this order is supreme ruler. So obviously we need to get the definitions out there just so everyone can kind of not get lost in what we're saying. How do you qualify to join the order? So what do you need to have done?
Well, officially, the only qualification to become a brother of the Order of the Secret Monitor is to be a Master Mason in the craft, and that's it. No requirement for chapter, no requirement for mark. Personally, I don't recommend that. I really do think that to complete the steps through ancient Freemasonry, a member should join the chapter first when they decide that they've got a little bit of time and they want to extend the knowledge a little bit. And then I think the natural way to get into the progressive orders is to join the mark proper. Now, I said at the beginning I didn't do that. I joined KT. It depends when you're rookie in Freemasonry. It depends who asks you and how they ask you and how they persuade you or inform you about the particular orders. But I think it's all the mark is the one that administers these orders, that you should be in that one, because, of course, one of the benefits of OSM, like many of the others, is that it's got its own benevolent fund. But everybody in the OSM can benefit from the Mark Benevolent Fund, which is the main one for covering all of the orders.
Cheers, John. You've told us a little bit about the story, and Neil mentioned about what the sort of lodge is called. But what sort of regalia or equipment do you need to have?
It's quite simple. There is no apron. It is for a member of the order when you first join. It is a breast jewel, and that is that, a small jewel with an OSM badge hanging on it. When you become a Prince of the Order, which is what you call when you get your second degree, that then the jewel stays exactly the same, but the ribbon colours change round. And officers in the conclave, like the visiting deacons and the equivalent of the wardens, are called the counsellor and the guide. They wear a sash. Some conclaves have the name of the office embroidered onto them. Some don't. And when you become a provincial officer, or if you become a provincial officer, your sash becomes blue with your provincial rank on it. And as happened to me late last year at the Grand Conclave annual meeting at Great Queen Street, when one becomes a Grand Officer, it then becomes a crimson sash with some gold edging and the rank that you have embroidered on the sash. So that's it, just a sash. And the reason that that the sash is useful is that in the second degree, quite a few of the officers do wear swords. And the sword hangs in a little slot at the bottom end of the sash on the hip. The design for that, and it works quite well.
Swords again, it just gets everyone excited, doesn't it?
Well, it's not the only weapon, of course, in the OSM. I'm not letting too many secrets away. In fact, I'm not going to let a secret away, but the bow and the arrow, or the bow and arrows, do appear in the OSM.
It's good that there's not much of a regalia requirement, because I think that leaves it quite accessible for a lot of people to then join without having to come into another sort of, not financial burden, but it's a financial consideration, isn't it?
Yes, the cost for the OSM is just about the same cost as every order at Mark Mason's Hall, which I think at the moment is £31 a year to the centre, and then whatever it costs for your province, which is literally just a few pound, and whatever it costs to meet at your Masonic Hall. So it's affordable, and the other advantage for me is that just carrying a sash, and provincial officers, grand officers also have a little collarette, so the jewel moves from the breast jewel to hang round the neck, and that means I can jump on my motorbike and I can whiz round to my meetings without having to worry about folding up an expensive and highly embroidered large apron and such as that. Presumably
not wearing the collarette on the bike.
Oh, I wear my collarette on the bike, but of course that's zipped underneath my motorcycle jacket. The sash rolls up in my pocket.
I love a good collarette. I'll join any order for a collarette. I want that to go down on record.
That's the soundbite. So, John, I also was collared into, if you'll pardon the pun, into joining OSM by Neil. He told me all about the order, and we joined in the very new province of Middlesex. And it's been a great experience. I've done my Prince's degree now as well. It'll be interesting to see what your answer to this question is, to see if I match up to your kind of standards. But what would you consider to be the perfect kind of ideal candidate for someone who wants to join OSM?
Well, I touched on this just slightly before. It has to be a Master Mason. I think they also should have joined the chapter of the Mark. Don't have to. So after it is somebody who is friendly and outgoing and
Yeah.
And has an interest in expanding their Masonic knowledge into this story of friendship, and somebody who wants to expand their group of Freemasons that they're aware of and that they spend time with outside of perhaps the centre where their craft lodge and chapter or Mark Lodge are. And what it is about all of these smaller progressive orders is that you can get round the province and get to know everybody relatively quickly. And when we have the annual meetings, we quite often are getting in excess of 3/4 of the profession. That's great. The camaraderie is exceptional.
It's funny you mention about getting out of the kind of typical centres where our OSM meets. We actually meet above an Indian restaurant in Aldgate in London, and it almost feels like it perhaps was once an office or something, and then one day they said, right, we're done with this, we're just going to convert it into a lodge room, and they've put down everything that they need to put down. And then we go for OSM, and then we go outside and have curry and Cobra beer, and it's brilliant. But it's just the quirkiest place in the world. It's no Great Queen Street. It is literally above an Indian restaurant, and it's quite an experience. But again, it gets you out of the kind of norm, and it's certainly the thing that I found with Freemasonry is generally because you'll always, when you join a new order, you'll join with someone that you know. Well, actually, because OSM was, at least for me, a little bit more niche, I've met a whole load new people in OSM rather than just being in the same craft lodge, the same chapter, the same Mark Lodge as the same people. It was a whole new set of people in OSM.
Yeah, that's good. And so something else for us up here in the north, most of my Masonic memberships are in the province of Durham, but I live in the province of Northumberland. And the next one just north of that is, in most things, a completely different constitution. It's Scotland.
Yeah.
Grand Lodge of Scotland and the few orders that they have. And a lot of the Mark Mason's Hall orders aren't allowed in Scotland. Because of the current decision of the rulers that I guess they don't want to dilute the membership into other orders and such as that. So we get quite a lot of Scottish members coming down to join other things, but OSM is in Scotland, administered by Mark Mason's Hall in London. So it's
interesting.
So in the OSM, it's not the Order of the Secret Monitor in England, Wales, and its conclaves and districts overseas. It is the Order of the Secret Monitor in the British Isles and its districts and conclaves overseas. So we have on our list of provincial Grand Supreme Rulers a couple of good friends of mine, or who've become good friends of mine, who are from north of the border, and that's another delight as well.
I think there needs to be some sort of OSM road trip up into Scotland, chaps. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm in.
As long as I can put my playlist on, a lot of Shania Twain. But yeah, we can do the road Celine Dion and Shania Twain. Yeah, we can do the road trip up there.
Amazing. Do you know what? That's actually a really nice little touch. You know what? This is why I wanted to do. One of the reasons why I think, we wanted to do this Beyond the Craft series, because every order is so different and it's got its little quirks and little added benefits and features. I didn't even know about that one. I didn't even know that you could go into Scotland for it. That's absolutely fantastic. One thing I think we need to mention that is potentially or perhaps not in our typical questions that we would have, is the inclusion and the ability to go on and join the Scarlet Cord. High level, John, I wonder if you can kind of mention that a little bit.
I'm sure that if Ian Currans, who is the head of the Scarlet Cord, listens to this, he'll be furious with me that I didn't mention that before your prompt. But I didn't know whether it was going to come in on this one or whether it was going to be a separate program. Yeah, the Scarlet Cord. I had a wonderful day on the 21st of July, 2010, and the ancient Masonic Order of the Scarlet Cord was constituted that day. It had existed a long time before, but over the course of, I suppose, the first decade of this century, each province was invited to start up a conclave called so in Durham it was the Durham Scarlet Cord Conclave under the OSM. And in July 2010, they were all disbanded. There's a better word for it than that, but that's essentially what happened. And in consistories of the Scarlet Cord. And qualification for membership of that is the OSM. The Scarlet Cord is new. It is attracting a lot of interest worldwide, and it's one of the fastest expanding Masonic orders that there is at the moment. I happen to be a secretary of a consistory of the Scarlet Cord as well. That's what those units are called. And that again is based on Old Testament. It's got 3 degrees. Well, it's got, actually, they're called grades. It's got 3 for everybody. The 4th one is only delivered at the centre. The 5th and the 6th grade are really quite special. And them, because all that I know is that people who have them have a rather large sheriff's badge style star that they wear on their breast pocket. Silver for the 5th grade, and there's a handful that have gold for the 6th.
So we've actually had Eon on before to do a special around the time he was actually appointed Grand Sumus.
Yes.
And I'm hoping he is going to come back on and join us for a podcast all about it. But I really wanted to just let obviously know that there is that connection.
Yeah, and Ian's a very he's a very modern leader. He's extremely active on social media, and he's done something really quite nice in this unprecedented time of lockdown. He invited each consistory on a day-by-day basis to put an update on the Scarlet Cord Facebook group. So it was our turn at number 7, which was a week past Saturday, and yeah, interesting to catch up with people online.
I was just going to jump in there actually. So for those of you that perhaps haven't heard Ian's episode, he is episode 6 of Brother Series 1, titled "Knowing Me, Knowing You," and there were some interesting revelations into Ian's fandom of a well-known band called ABBA. So if you do want to kind of play the game and see if you can spot as many ABBA references, go back and listen to that one.
I had no idea that this was a Desert Island Discs type program. Otherwise, I might have put some thought into music.
John, there's still time. There is still time.
John, we reached out to our Twitter universe to see if they had any questions for you guys about the order. One of our regular contributors, Adam Masonic 1, he asked about how does the story and its context fit into the ethos of a modern Mason?
Goodness, that's Adam Masonic 1. He's clearly very deep thinking modern Mason, or maybe he's not a modern Mason. That's a very difficult question to answer. The story is a very Old Testament story, and whether one or whatever religion one has, which of course everybody who is a Freemason has a belief in something or other, that there are ways in which you can think about these old stories in a modern way. And the simplest thing to say is this is an old story about a very close friendship and the respect and the watching out for each other, and the support for each other that these people in yesteryear, David and Jonathan, did. And that's what we should be doing in this day and age, now more so than ever in these unprecedented times. Looking out for each other and maintaining friendships, even though with social distancing, it's a little bit more challenging.
So the next question we had was from Torquay Mason, which is at Grecian 1999. It's something that actually you've already touched on, but I think just to let Torquay Mason know that, you know, we're putting his question forward to you. He's asked, should it only be considered after joining Holy Royal Arch and or Mark, and has said that it doesn't seem to be talked about as much as others. So perhaps the first point you've covered, but perhaps the second point is there something to do with the kind of, is there a reason that OSM is perhaps not as well known as some of the other progressive orders?
I haven't been aware that it's not talked about. Perhaps it's different in the southwest than the northeast. Certainly in the Masonic halls, where the various orders have their boards up, their past rooms and such like, the OSM's there alongside the others. We do appear online. We do appear in provincial publications with the lists of the officers, and certainly up here at Craft chapter and Mark annual meetings, the provincial supreme ruler, the head of the OSM, is acknowledged in order along with the heads of the other Masonic orders. So I'm surprised to hear about that question. I did mention this earlier. It has its own benevolent fund, and you know, we don't really want to throw our charitable giving out there from the rooftops and make too big a thing of it, because it's more important to give than to get any recognition and acknowledgement for the giving. But I think it's fair to mention that the OSM do like matched funding, and I'll give a couple of examples. I am a trustee of a small charity called Building Self-Belief. The charity is there to, it's quite a new charity, only been going a couple of years, but it's there to give chances to kids at the highest risk of exclusion from school, just to give them some belief in themselves. And they wanted to have 10 laptop computers, and they got a chance of them at £100 each, refurbished ones, haven't been used for 3 years in another place, and so £250 from my conclave went to Province. Province match funded that to £250, and then the OSM Benevolent Fund match funded that 500 up to 1,000. So there are some really good news stories about that, and I mean, I can give more good news stories about blood bikes, which is another passion of mine, where the OSM Benevolent Fund has helped them.
But perhaps in that case, perhaps you're right. Perhaps it is a slightly regional thing, or I think, to be honest, it's all. It's a very personal journey. You know, everyone's Masonic journey is very different, and I think so much of where you go in Freemasonry is dictated by the people that you're with, the people that are in your craft lodge, you know, the friends that you have in Freemasonry. So, you know, potentially it is just a very personal thing, but no, thank you. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you hit on the key point there, just generally about Freemasonry, about it's more important to give than to get the glory of giving. So that's absolutely right.
Over to you, Taz. Don't know if he's on mute.
While we're waiting for Taz, I can just say that the bird song in your garden, Neil, is absolutely delightful.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. Have we got a Taz? Is Taz here? He's muted. I will, not a problem at all. I will lead off on that next question. So we've had a tweet from Jake_Huggy95, or JHuggy95, and you'll like this one. He asks, "Do I get a bow and arrow?"
There's only 2 people handle the bow and arrow. I suppose if he's got a real desire to do so in a Masonic meeting room, then progress to the Supreme Ruler's chair. There's more reasons to become a Supreme Ruler, but it is the Supreme Ruler that actually operates the bow and arrow. And then in provincial Grand Conclave, there is a rank of provincial bow bearer, but usually one would have to be a past Supreme Ruler before you get provincial rank. But the provincial bow bearer is in the procession and carries the bow when province make formal visits.
That is awesome. So thank you for kind of answering some of our listeners' questions. We've got one little bit. It's kind of the Masonic version of Star in a reasonably priced car. Other analogies are also available, but that was the one that came to mind. And what we're asking every one of our guests to do is to pitch their order in 30 seconds. So if you were speaking to somebody that you'd met in one of the Masonic halls up in Newcastle, and they only had 30 seconds before they went into the meeting, what would be the thing what would be the things that you would say?
So does anybody have a stopwatch on them?
I do. Do you trust me? Of course you do. I'm the grand sword bearer. I must be trustworthy if they're giving me that huge piece of sharp metal to carry around.
Okay, so you gotta get as close to, and we are doing a leaderboard for this, so you gotta get as close to 30 seconds on the dot as possible.
John, are you ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
Well, OS is a great progressive Masonic order. It's an extremely friendly one, perhaps the most friendly one, because we have some officers there called deacons, and they will get in touch with you between each meeting. And the whole ceremony is based on a story of friendship between 2 characters from the Old Testament, David and Jonathan. Now, I like it because I have their names. I'm called John and I'm called David, but that's not the best reason for you to join, because of course you don't have those names. Just have some real friendship in another order. Give it a go. Order of the Secret Monitor.
Wow.
Yes, well, I've got a reputation
That's not
for
bad.
being. I've got a reputation for being verbose. and in my defence, I used my own, but I forgot to press start. Until I was 10 seconds in.
Amazing. How did he do, Taz? What are you showing?
45 seconds. 45 seconds. So no one.
We're gonna have to get a proper Star in a reasonably priced car leaderboard so we can write
Yep.
a little slip.
Yep.
Put it up.
No one's actually got close to 30 seconds yet. So
On which side? Is everybody over?
Everyone is over.
But that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because it means that
It's a tough job.
actually,
Tough ask.
exactly, it is a tough ask. It's a very tough ask. Right. So, John, I want to thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your afternoon to spend it with us, and to talk about the Order of the Secret Monitor. I think we can all agree that it's a wonderful, friendly order that kind of really encapsulates the camaraderie of Freemasonry. So yeah, John, thank you ever so much. If there's anything you'd like to plug about the blood bikes or the order in general, now's your time, sir.
Well, the first thing I'd like to plug is this wonderful group of interviewers that you have, because not only have you done a great job, but you've given me the opportunity for the first time in 3 weeks and 1 day of lockdown to actually wear a shirt with a collar. I had no idea that anybody was going to be on wearing T-shirts, which is absolutely fine, because, so shirt with a collar. Blood bikes. I did, when I retired from the police, decide that I needed to do something a little bit different, and motorcycling became a hobby of mine. And then it was through a Masonic magazine, actually, that I found out about this national organisation called Blood Bikes, of which there's about 40 charities. I joined the one up here that covers Durham and Northumberland and Tyne and Weir, called Northumbria Blood Bikes, and I ride for them quite often. At the moment, I'm riding for them even more often because my Masonic diary suddenly became empty with the suspension of Freemasonry. So I've got a huge amount of respect and gratitude for Darren Coleman, the charities manager at Mark Mason's Hall, and all of the others who work in that charity arm, because they bought, to the best of my knowledge, the first ever blood bike outright, which I've been riding last weekend.
That's amazing.
Days. And we took that to Mark Grand Lodge when it met in Great Queen Street in September 2016. And to cut a long story short, that was a kickstart to there being interest amongst all the Mark Mason's Hall orders into blood bikes. And if you remember, a couple of years ago, the Mark Benevolent Fund celebrated its 150th anniversary, and they had a sponsored walk where all the PGMs and their executives went to London and walked around some London parks, and they hoped to raise 150,000. They raised 450,000, and they spent all of that on blood bikes and blood cars. So there's blood bikes and blood cars bought by the Mark Benevolent Fund all over the country, and I have a huge amount of satisfaction when I ride blood bike Mark Master Mason around here. So nothing else, because of the huge amount of support that is given from St. James to a charity that's very close to my heart. Support the orders. They're all worthwhile. They're all fun. I think I'm a member of the vast majority of them. There's one specialist order administered from Mark Mason's Hall I'm not a member of. One, I believe. But when time is on your side, and you don't have other commitments, give them a go. They've all got great parts in them.
John, thank you very much for joining us. We are incredibly grateful for your time, and I know that our listeners will be really grateful for you know, giving them more information about this order. And I really do hope that once we are unlocked from the lockdown, we will get some people who will join off the back of this, or at least start to inquire. So John, thank you very much for joining us. Round of applause, everybody.
And I'm genuinely interested in your road trip. If you'll take an oldie with you, you've got to, unless you go up the west coast, you've got to go through Newcastle upon Tyne to get to Scotland. So, whether it's by train or by road, if you've got a spare place, make sure you drop me a line.
Definitely. I think we'll be driving up the A1, so definitely to Newcastle. Okay.
Well, when you see the Angel of the North, you'll know that you're not far from me.
Well, thanks very much, John.
All the best, guys. It's been a pleasure to chat.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. And of course, we'd love you to get in touch with us and let us know your thoughts on the podcast, and let us know generally how things are going with your lockdown. So you can contact us on Twitter. We're on @BrotherMasonic. We're also on Facebook as well, facebook.com/BrotherMasonic. And we've also got our brand new website, which is brothermasonic.com, where you can listen to the podcasts. You can find information about how you can get them on your phone. And you can, of course, also get in contact with us. So please do get in contact with us as much as you can. Check out all of our socials. And we'd also like to say a massive thank you to Mark Masons Hall, who we are producing this podcast in conjunction with. And you can find out more information about them and all of the orders that are administered from there at markmasonshall.org.
Thank you so much as always, guys. We will be back with you very soon with our next order. We are brother, you are too. Thanks again for listening.
This is Brother Beyond the Craft with Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu. This was a Brother production in association with Mark Masons Hall, presented by Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu, with Jack Saunders, produced by Joshua Worley. You can follow us on social media at Brother Masonic on Facebook and Twitter.